The video responded to is linked in the description. Being a 70s kid, the way I avoid the negative aspects of nostalgia is by contextualizing it more broadly throughout history like Nick did. There's no perfect period, and always many problems that go along with them. The main point about nostalgia that the psyche wants to integrate is difference identification, which has a causal tree. Once we identify the sinking victim in the present, the mind goes back to a contrast of time. This is useful to strengthen causal awareness, and when mixed with broader contextualization can avoid getting lost in what we now lack. Nostalgia can prevent people from facing the present and the future. What we need to do is use the insights to navigate, which provides hope of harm mitigation and sinking victim avoidance where possible. As long as there are windows of opportunity to climb through and the Overton window hasn't occluded all paths, except to the pits of hell, then there's hope, at least for many who have years ahead of them. You also have to consider effective brain functioning and habits in order to get the most out of this. You can be informed by fear and panic, but it needs to pass quickly and transmute, be metabolized, into a calm resolve with positive agency based on poise. Making money and changing your life may be an emergency and continue to be for a long time. This seems to be the systemic messaging. But part of that process is brain rewiring and effective habit formation or alignment for reinforcement. So it's a blend of the inner and outer paths, which allows us to deal with life's challenges better than our peers who merely fall into the sinkhole of nostalgia and the risks of poisoning the mind as Nietzsche highlighted. We may not achieve preset goals specifically, but we'll be more prepared for the future and adaptive while healthy and still using our personal agency with vitality. We'll also be better prepared for decline and the terminal phase. Thus, if we make it that far, we'll be representing the positive and energetic elderly like my nonagenarian mother, who's vital. If not, then that's fine, as it's okay to go early as well. To expand on this, nostalgia becomes dangerous when it detaches from historical context. The mind may remember warmth, simplicity, social cohesion, music, childhood atmospheres, freedom, or a felt sense of possibility, but it often edits out the surrounding costs, economic hardship, social exclusion, medical limitations, family dysfunction, gender constraints, racism, political turbulence, crime, war anxiety, and all the hidden suffering that existed alongside the beauty. Every period has its charm, but every period also has its casualties. This is why broad historical contextualization is essential. It prevents nostalgia from becoming myth. The 50s, 70s, 90s, or any other remembered period can function as a symbolic reservoir, but we should refrain from idealizing and getting lost in it. Once a person starts believing that a previous age was simply better, the mind can become trapped in contrastive despair, purifying the past, contaminating the present and foreclosing the future. But nostalgia also contains an opportunity. It is not merely a weakness. It often begins with difference identification. The psyche recognizes that something has changed for the worse. A texture of life, a social rhythm, a form of trust, a degree of affordability, a pattern of family or community life, or even a style of attention has been lost or degraded. That recognition has a causal tree. The mind identifies a sinking victim in the present, oneself, a generation, a class, a culture, a family structure, a way of life, and then searches backward for contrast. It asks implicitly, when did this feel less broken? When did life feel more open? What changed? This backward movement can be useful if it strengthens causal awareness. It becomes harmful only when it turns into paralysis, resentment, or fantasy restoration. The proper use of nostalgia is not to live in the past, but to extract information from it. It can reveal what the present lacks: social trust, rootedness, affordable housing, slower rhythms, intergenerational continuity, meaningful work, local community, less technological saturation, more embodied life, or a stronger sense of collective direction and optimism for the future. These insights can then become navigational tools and inspiration for creativity and productivity rather than emotional traps. So, the key distinction is between nostalgia as regression and nostalgia as orientation. This is where my point about the future becomes important. Nostalgia does not only prevent people from facing the present, it can also prevent them from facing the future. A person can become so fixated on what has been lost that they fail to identify the remaining windows of opportunity. Even in degraded systems, there may still be openings: personal reinvention, financial restructuring, skill acquisition, relocation, relationship repair, community building, spiritual deepening, physical health restoration, creative production, or strategic withdrawal from destructive environments. The Overton window matters here because if social imagination narrows too far, People start to believe that only the pits of hell remain available. Their sense of possibility collapses. They no longer perceive alternative paths because the cultural field has conditioned them to see only decline, competition, precarity, and exhaustion. Nostalgia then becomes one more sinkhole, not merely sadness about the past, but a cognitive emotional field that reduces agency. This is why the inner path and outer path have to be blended. Outer adaptation matters. Money, housing, health, skills, networks, legal structures, technology, political conditions, and systemic constraints are real. But inner cultivation also matters because panic and fear can become metabolically expensive states. They may alert us to danger, but they cannot be allowed to govern the whole organism for years. Fear may initiate recognition, but it must be transmuted into calm resolve. That transmutation is crucial. Panic says, "I am trapped." Calm resolve says, "The situation is serious, but I can still act." This shift is not merely motivational. It is neurological, behavioral, and existential. Effective brain functioning, habit formation, emotional regulation, attention control, and embodied poise become part of survival and flourishing. If the system keeps messaging emergency, make money, escape decline, secure your future, compete harder, move faster, then one of the most radical responses is to develop the internal conditions that prevent emergency from destroying cognition, our sense of well-being, and our personal agency. In that sense, nostalgia must be metabolized in the same way fear must be metabolized. It cannot remain undigested. Undigested nostalgia becomes bitterness, ressentiment, political fantasy, generational contempt, or passive mourning. Metabolized nostalgia becomes discernment that feeds personal agency and its potential. It says, something valuable was present there and something has been lost, yet something can be recovered, translated, rebuilt, or protected, but not by hallucinating the past and getting lost in it. This also connects with Nietzsche's warning about the poisoning of the mind. The person who cannot metabolize loss becomes vulnerable to ressentiment. They begin to hate the present not only because it is flawed, but because they feel humiliated by their inability to master it. Their nostalgia then becomes morally corrosive. It feeds accusation without transformation. It turns memory into grievance. But the cultivated person uses memory differently. They do not deny loss, but they do not worship it. They do not deny decline, but they refuse to become lost in decline. They extract the signal from the ache. The cultivated response is to identify what mattered, why it disappeared, and what can still be done with that knowledge. That is where hope becomes realistic rather than naive. Hope does not require the belief that all goals will be achieved. It does not require certainty that society will improve, that one's plans will succeed, or that every window will remain open. Hope is the maintenance of agency under uncertainty. It is the refusal to let the present's disorder fully colonize the future. Even if preset goals fail, the person who has cultivated poise, vitality, adaptive intelligence, and causal awareness will still be better prepared than someone who collapses into nostalgic despair. They may not win in the simplified social sense, but they will remain more coherent. They will be more capable of adjusting, learning, grieving, rebuilding, and acting with dignity. This extends into aging and mortality. A healthy relationship to nostalgia can prepare us not only for the future of society, but for the future of the body. Decline is part of life. The question is whether we meet it as people who have been hollowed out by the poisoning of the mind, or as people who have continued to metabolize experience into wisdom. The image of the vital elderly matters here because it shows that aging does not have to mean psychic collapse. We can carry memory without being imprisoned by it. We can represent continuity, humor, resilience, and energetic presence even late in life. And if life ends earlier, that too can be held without melodrama. The point is not to cling desperately to duration, but to live with as much agency, coherence, and vitality as possible while the window is open. Nostalgia, properly handled, becomes part of that vitality. It reminds us that life has textures worth protecting, but it must be disciplined by context, transformed by understanding, and directed toward action. That is the positive use of nostalgia. It becomes not a retreat from life, but a form of temporal intelligence, a way of reading the past in order to navigate the present and remain open to the future.